Chapter 10. A Cry in the Night. It rained hard that night, and Mary awakened to the sound of heavy raindrops beating against her window. The wind was whistling loudly through the manor, so she could not get back to sleep. Mary tossed and turned for nearly an hour, when something suddenly made her sit up in bed. It was a strange noise coming from down the hall. "That isn't the wind," she told herself. "That is the sound of somebody crying." Mary got out of bed and went over to her door. Poking her head into the hallway, Mary listened carefully for a few minutes. She was positive that she heard crying. "I must find out who is crying," she said. Mary took the candle by her bedside and went quietly out of her room. The halls were long and dark, but she didn't mind. She was determined to find out who was crying so horribly. Walking down hallway after hallway, she turned left, then right, then left again. She came nearer to the crying. Clutching her candle, Mary kept walking. Her heart was beating so loudly she was sure it would give her away. The crying, Mary discovered, was coming from behind a large door. It was slightly open, so Mary pushed it gently, opening it further. She peeked into the room and gasped in shock. Mary thought for sure she was dreaming. It was a big room, furnished with beautiful furniture. There was a small fire burning in the fireplace and a candle flickering next to a huge bed. On the bed, a young boy cried fretfully. Mary stood by the door, gaping at the boy. Her candlelight caught his attention, and he turned his head and stared back at her with very wide eyes. "Who are you?" he whispered between sobs. "Are you a ghost?" "No," Mary managed to reply. "Are you?" The boy continued to stare and stare at Mary. He could not take his eyes off her. "No," he said finally. "I am Colin." "Colin?" Mary asked. "Colin Craven," the boy answered. "Who are you?" "I am Mary Lennox. Lord Craven is my uncle." "He is my father," Colin said. Mary gasped. "Your father? But no one told me he had a boy." Colin kept his eyes on her. He had stopped crying and was now studying Mary. "Come here," he said. Mary approached the bed, and Colin reached out his hand and touched her arm. "You are real," he announced. "I have such real dreams sometimes. I thought you might be one of them." "Where did you come from?" "From my room," Mary told him. "The rain woke me up, and then I heard someone crying and wanted to find out who it was." "Why were you crying?" "Because I couldn't sleep. My head aches." "What was your name again?" he asked, sitting up slightly. "Mary Lennox. Didn't anyone tell you I had come to live here?" Colin shook his head. "No, they wouldn't dare." Mary was confused. "Why not?" "Because they know I would only be afraid you might see me. I don't like it when people look at me." "Why?" Mary asked. "Because I am always very ill. I am always lying in this bed. My father won't let people see me. The servants are not allowed to look at me or speak about me either." Mary pulled the chair next to Colin's bed and sat down. "This is certainly a strange house," she said. "Everything is such a secret. Rooms are locked up and gardens are locked up. And you, have you been locked up too?" "No," said Colin. "I stay in this room because it tires me to move out of it." "Does your father come to see you?" Mary asked. "Sometimes," Colin replied. "Usually he comes when I'm asleep. I don't think he wants to see me." Mary looked at Colin. "Why?" "My mother died when I was a baby, and it makes him sad to look at me," Colin explained. "He thinks I don't know, but I've heard people say that's the reason he can't bear to look at me." Mary glanced around the room. "Have you always been here?" she asked. "Yes," Colin replied quietly. "I used to be taken out of the house, but people would always stare at me. Now I stay in all the time. My doctor, Dr. Craven, says I ought to get fresh air, but I hate fresh air." "I didn't like it either when I first came," Mary told him, "but now I like it very much." "I don't know anything about you. Tell me everything," Colin said. Mary took a deep breath and told Colin about India, about her parents dying, and about how she came to Misselthwaite Manor. Colin had many questions, and Mary answered all of them. From Colin, Mary learned that her uncle rarely visited his son, but he sent Colin books and toys. She also learned that Colin usually stayed in bed and ordered everyone around. "Everyone must do what I ask," he told Mary. "I get sick when I'm angry, and no one wants me to get sick. My father has instructed everyone to do exactly what I want." Mary thought Colin reminded her of a Rajah prince she knew in India, who had many servants and liked to order them around. "How old are you?" Colin asked. "Almost 10, she answered. "Like you." Colin's large eyes peered suspiciously at Mary. "How do you know I'm 10?" he demanded. "Because you said your mother died when you were born, and that's when the garden door was locked and the key was buried," Mary replied. Colin leaned toward her. "What are you talking about? What garden?" Mary hesitated for a second. She couldn't believe Colin didn't know about the garden that had been his mother's favorite place. "The garden your father hates," she replied. "He locked it up after your mother died, and no one is allowed to go in it. No one even knows where the key is. He buried it." Colin wanted to know all about the garden. Mary told him all she knew, but she didn't want him to know she had found the garden. She didn't know Colin that well, and she wasn't sure she could trust him. "Just how sick are you?" Mary asked slowly. "Oh, I'm supposed to die," Colin replied flatly. "Ever since I can remember, I've heard people say that I'm going to die soon. At first I thought I was too little to understand, and now they think I can't hear them when they say it. But I can." "Don't you want to live?" Mary asked. "No," Colin said, "but I don't want to die either. I just don't like being sick all the time. I really don't want to talk about this. Let's talk about the garden." "Don't you want to see it?" Mary bit her bottom lip. "Yes," she replied gently. "I do too," Colin proclaimed. "I never wanted to see anything more in my life. I want to find that key and unlock the door. I could go there in my wheelchair." Colin's expression changed suddenly. "I'm going to make them open that door," he announced. Mary gasped quietly. "That would ruin everything. Everyone would know her secret." "Oh no, don't do that," Mary cried. "But they have to listen to me," Colin protested. "I thought you wanted to see it." "I do want to see it," Mary said with a lump in her throat. "But if you make them open the door," she said, thinking quickly, "then it will never be a secret again." "What do you mean?" Colin asked. Mary pulled her chair closer to Colin. "You see," she said in a very low voice, "if no one knows about the garden but us, and there was a door hidden somewhere, and we found it, then we could go into the secret garden together and shut the door behind us. No one would ever know we were there. We could pretend that it was our garden. We could play there every day and plant seeds and make it blossom and come alive. Don't you see how much nicer it would be if it were kept a secret?" Colin dropped back on his pillow. His pale face had just a hint of color, and Mary could tell he liked the idea. "I never had a secret before," Colin said. "This will be a great secret," Mary announced. "I promise. Every day I'll go out and look for the key and the door. I'm so sure I'll find it. Then maybe we can find a boy to push you in your chair, and we can go alone to the secret garden." "I would really like that," Colin said, yawning slightly. Colin lay still and listened as Mary talked about the garden and all the beautiful plants and flowers they could grow there. She talked about the birds and the baby animals who would live in their garden. "When you find the garden," Colin said, rubbing his eyes, "then we can visit it every day. I'm glad you came here, Mary." "So am I," Mary said. "I'll come as often as I can," she added, "but I will have to look for the garden every day." Colin's eyes were closing. "Yes, you must," he said sleepily. Mary sang softly to Colin, a song that her ayah used to sing to her to help her sleep. A moment later, Colin was fast asleep.